welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for Jingle, 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 Jingle. I know it's like, it's probably December. It could be December. It's really strange because, see, when I record, right, I'm essentially sitting on, like, one side of the table. But a guy who's used to sitting on both sides of the table is a gentleman by the name of Giles Pound. He's got his own wonderful he does some wonderful reviews which concentrate around kind of single player games, and also he does reviews of normal games and then looks at the kind of the single player variant. As I say, his name's Giles Pound. It's from both sides of my table. And good evening to you, sir.
Good evening.
Thanks very much for coming on. I kind of feel honoured because the amount of review stuff and things that you put out is constant. Basically, you've always got something kind of on the go, which is kind of fantastic. So thank you very, very much for coming on. I should say hello to everybody who's out there. I hope you have been. You're on the nice list as opposed to potentially on the naughty list, but it doesn't matter because everybody gets presents, so it doesn't matter anymore. The reason that we do this is because there's quite simply not enough podcasts out there where I just talk to people. So that's why I keep making them. And the other reason that we do this is because I've been aware of Giles' work for some time, and he's one of these guys. He's very... He's just very consistent and very constant, and his stuff's very, very interesting to read, and he's kind of it's very, very entertaining and very thought out and insightful. So I thought, let's get him on the show and have a chat with him and find out a little bit more, which is why we've got you on tonight, basically.
Very mediocre. You missed that one out.
I was gonna add that in, but
I do excel at mediocre.
Well, that's good, because as I keep saying to everybody, we strive to be average anyway. So hopefully we'll kind of meet somewhere in the middle of the table, because there's nothing wrong with being mid-table. It's fine. But what we'd like to do, I guess, as we normally do, is we just like to find out a little bit about people's kind of history with a hobby. So we want to look at the, kind of maybe the living room of the past before we look at the kind of the kitchen of the
future.
present and maybe the dining room of the future with its lovely Geek and Son table. But do you want to tell us a little bit about how you got into the hobby in the first place?
Blimey. Initially, probably 10 years old, my dad brought the first version of Escape from Colditz, so I think that's probably my first proper board game. Yeah, which has been redone fairly recently, hasn't it?
Yeah, Osprey Games did it. Yeah.
So that and the real game of UR or however you want to pronounce it. Those two were the first two kind of proper board games when I was a teeny tot, and then didn't do anything whatsoever until. About the 90s, was it Decipher had the Star Wars collectible car game thing, and I kind of went down that avenue for a while, and then got into Magic: The Gathering.
Really? I wouldn't have had you pegged as a kind of a Magic guy, to be honest.
Well, I mean, at the time I had no one to play with, so I used it at the school that I taught at. So I used to run Magic clubs, either at lunchtime or after school. So you got kind of half dozen kids coming down playing, and that was kind of when I started getting into the board game lark.
Right. Okay.
But it really sort of very much on the sidelines. There were huge amounts of very expensive games that I just didn't stand a chance of buying, and didn't even consider kind of writing about them until Gloom of Kilforth hit the table from Tristan Hall.
Yeah.
And that was the very, very first review, just over 12 months ago, actually.
Okay. So let's step back a bit. I mean, did you have quite a reasonable collection then? I mean, were you a collector at the time from the 90s onwards, or were you?
Oh, no. I had a fair amount of the Decipher Star Wars, and I had, oh God, I can't even think who did it. The really old Lord of the Rings card game with the eye printed on the back. I can't think who did that. I had that, and that was pretty much it, really.
All right.
And it really was probably the last 5 years that I started buying one or two games, and it's only been the last 13, 14 months that it's really annoyed my wife considerably because the cupboards are full and they're now stacked up 3 high on top of the cupboards.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so.
But what kind of makes somebody right? I mean, were you a member of is there access to kind of local clubs where you are to play games?
I think that's why I went down the solo route, because I live in the middle of nowhere,
right.
rural Shropshire.
All
I
right.
think Telford is the closest games meet, which is kind of a good 40-mile round trip for me, which didn't really seem much point.
Yeah.
So just playing at home. Originally with the family, but then the kids grew up, and number one daughter was 19 now and lives elsewhere, and number two daughter's now, she's 15 or going on 15, and it's just makeup and boys, and they lost the will to play games.
Actually, sit down with you.
So fortunately, nearly all of the games that I had got some form of solo variant, or were just purely solo games. So that's where it went. That's the background, really.
So you kind of decided to go. Did you then were you actively kind of seeking out kind of games that you could play solo? I mean, was that one of the main things when you're looking online, or is it one of the things that, I mean, when you first start, I mean, I know you said you just started kind of writing about 12 months ago.
Yeah.
But when you were doing the collecting, was that an important thing when you were trying to select games to play?
I would get things that I thought the family would like to play, but having some kind of solo option was one of the main criteria. Because if they're not available, I want to be playing a game.
Mm-hmm.
So I think pretty much everything now, certainly the last 3 years that I've bought, they've all got some form of solo variant.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe a couple that haven't, but there's always solo players on Board Game Geek that come up with, quite fantastic solo variants. So, yeah.
I mean, have you played any of Jamie Stegmaier's stuff like Scythe and Viticulture and things like that?
I had a printed play of Scythe and quite enjoyed that. But I backed the Viticulture Tuscany Fancy Collector set, and I managed to back that. So that had all the fantastic expansions, and you can milk cows and make cheese and tomato ketchup and all sorts of nonsense. So I mean that kind of really set me on the path for looking at solos with because that was kind of the forerunner of all the automas, card driven AI kind of mechanics. And it looked fantastic on the table as well.
Yeah. Have you not? Because the one thing that Katie Aidley kind of talks about a lot is the kind of the war games, like the coin games and things like that. There's usually a way you can play kind of a lot of them kind of solo. Is that something you've ever ventured down as well, or was it just not your bag?
Yeah, definitely. I've got oh god, my brain's absolutely terrible these days. Liberty or Death, or did have it, but Tristan's borrowed it. So I did have that copy. Tristan's got it. I want it back now, Tristan, if you're listening. Because they have some really complicated but really effective flowchart spreadsheet kind of. I don't even know what you would call them. Big diagrams that you follow to operate the opponents. And you can be playing against 3 AIs with that, so that's quite cool. Labyrinth Awakening as well, similar kind of idea, but it's basically you against the jihadists, or you play that side against the US. So I mean they're really good, and I'm hoping just on that same line that Laurie Phillips did the Coin Tribes Revolt. It's like a level 9 card, which I think's been picked up by somebody fairly recently. But he's certainly working on making that a true coin solo by coming up with some bots, because at the moment it's kind of the regular 4-player game. So I like. I mean, they melt your brain, but if there's just you on the table, it isn't so bad, because you can spend half an hour figuring out one of the AI's moves, go away, have a bite to eat, come back and do the rest of the moves. So yeah,
is it something that you plan out kind of time for? Do you have like a kind of a game night, or a night that your partner knows to kind of stay away from you and kind of leave you alone at the kind of the table to get on for it, or is it just kind of whenever you can find kind of free time?
Every night's game night.
Really?
We have like a visitor's room, or a guest room, I suppose you could call it, which has a big workbench with the printer and all the day-to-day crap. But half of that is my gaming table, but it actually folds down into a double bed, leaving the gaming table as it is.
Okay.
So I can have I don't know, maybe I'm playing Village Attacks or Perdition's Mouth, quite lengthy games. Leave those set up with all the minis and everything else. People want to come, you drop the table down, and the whole game's still there for whenever I get a chance to play it again. So.
Right. Okay.
The only drawback to leaving any game out is cats. we have 4 of the little furry buggers, and sofas galore. We've got hundreds of sofas and thousands of beds in the house. We can't move for beds and sofas. No, they want to lie on a bloody game board.
Well, of course they do. It's every cat's kind of hereditary right to sleep on the most awkward thing that is going to cause people the most awkward grief. I mean, you're bound to know that, Giles. I mean, that's just the way that it is, So yeah, I mean, there is a little bit of sympathy here, but there's not an awful lot of sympathy here, especially if it's not like they just turned up one day at your door and you let them in. You've obviously made a conscious decision to have them. So
parts of the family made a conscious decision, yes. yes.
But
I wasn't necessarily party to that decision making.
Well, but you have to just nod and play along. Yeah.
Yes, dear. We can have a cat. I don't mind. Yes.
What's kind of been, I guess, kind of making you smile at the moment? You mentioned Village Attacks. I mean, is there any games that are kind of you're really kind of enjoying kind of playing recently?
Just at the moment, I'm playing 1066 just arrived the other week.
Is that Tears for Many Mothers?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Really enjoying that one. Came with the fantastic rubbery playmat. Put that on the table. There we go. Fantastic. Radetzky, I picked that up at Essen. That's quite an interesting one. Donning the Purple and Dwarves Winter, surprisingly. Very, very simple, but
really?
such a puzzle-solving thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it's very cartoony and looks like it's a total kids game, but it's actually really, really entertaining as a solo game.
Oh, awesome! How did you get on?
Surprised me. Yeah.
How did you get on with Donning the Purple?
Well, I joined the campaign. I was kind of not playtesting because it had already been all of that was done, but I had a print and play copy to try out, and then I wrote a bit of a review on that. And I actually like the solo variant. I know the multiplayer is kind of a 3-player asymmetric kind of thing, but the solo game I quite enjoyed. Still a kind of a puzzle, where do I put my chaps to stop the invading whoever's, and but it works really well. I did hear one or two people say, well, it's not so engaging, but I totally disagree. Like every politician can, talking out of their bottoms. No, it is. It's quite entertaining. There's a lot to do, and it's a pig to try and win, because the onslaught of enemy, you've only got a limited amount of units to use against that, and you're meddling with the Senate as well. You've got to try and keep on top of the centres. I think there's about 3 different ways that you can actually get nailed into the ground. So you fight in all corners if you can have 3 corners of a square. I don't know. Maybe it's a triangle we're stuck inside.
How do you go from? I mean, you've started collecting your games. You said, right?
Yeah.
And then about 14 to 12 months ago, there was a decision that you made to say, actually, what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start writing about these things. I mean, was it because there wasn't enough? Because I remember seeing you kind of pop up, and the first thing I thought was, well, there's somebody that's writing about solo games. And the second thing that I thought was, I don't remember seeing that many people writing about kind of solo games or solo variants of games. So was that? I mean, what was your motivation to actually pick up the keyboard and start typing away?
I don't really know. I know that I wanted to try it out to see how it went when I got Gloomy Kill Force, mainly because I was really excited about that game, and it was one that primarily was a solo game. So I thought I'd write about the experience of that, and that kind of led on to 1 or 2 other games that I'd gone silly backing all sorts of nonsense on Kickstarter, and then quite a few had turned up in that period of time. So I thought, well, let's write about these and see how it goes. It wasn't necessarily a conscious decision, there's nobody writing about solo. I think it's purely that those were the games I had, and I was quite interested in how they played in comparison to the multiplayer variant. Were soloists getting the same experience out of the game, or was somebody just pasting on a rather pithy beat your own score thing right at the end? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it kind of went that way. I'll write that. I'll write the next one. It sort of gathered momentum, and there are actually quite a lot. I discovered once I started, there were quite a lot of people writing about solo games, more than I realised. But it's kind of one of those things that doesn't necessarily pop up straight away. There's a lot of particularly the big American reviewers tend to just look at Cult of the New, and you don't get that solo perspective so often.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think that's what we did. As I say, I mean, I know we joke about kind of like the reason that we do this is because there's not enough podcasts out there about board games. But I think at the beginning, you kind of checked out at the beginning, and I was kind of like, I know of Shut Up and Sit Down, for instance. I know of the Dice Tower Network. I know of maybe a couple of others, but they all seem to be kind of specialised in folk like Shut Up and Sit Down. You're like, well, I'm going to launch a podcast but we're never ever going to be kind of anywhere near kind of sitting in the same room as those guys. So it doesn't matter if we kind of have one. And then, as you're right, you kind of over very, very quickly, you do realise that like there is an entire kind of, for us, there's an entire section in iTunes which all seem to be about the hobby and seem to be totally full about kind of like 20 million people who were all doing the kind of the various kind of different podcasts. I take it there is a different approach when it comes to sitting down and writing. Do you have like a kind of a set plan or a schedule you follow for when you're writing the games? Because I'm guessing that writing about a solo variant of a game or reviewing a game yourself is potentially a completely different experience from playing it with other people, I would guess.
Yeah. I mean, you obviously miss all the banter that you would normally get thrown across the table at the players. Although I quite often end up arguing with myself, and I always talk out aloud anyway. I don't know. I've got kind of a template that I'm quite happy with the parts that I cover of a game, but everything that I write about, it's kind of a very time-consuming thing for me. Is that I've got to play it, so I'm really inside the game. I mean, I'll keep doing that, and that's the way that I work it. But it does frustrate me sometimes when you see even some of the bigger names out there doing things that it looks like, well, maybe they've played it once, or they've perhaps only just read through the rule book and then wrote, well, this is how it plays. I like this bit. I don't like that bit. And for me, that's not fulfilling enough. I mean, I don't write about how to play the game because there's so many people doing the playthrough videos or the rules videos, and there's enough people writing about how to play something. So mine tend to be more about the experience. I mean, it still mentions mechanics and bits and pieces that I like, but I try and focus more about how it feels to play for a soloist. Yeah.
And is it a different? Do you think you're writing in a different kind of way? Because okay, how to put this? It's like if I was writing about, say, Dinosaur Island,
yes,
then if I wrote it from about the time that I say played it with at the Games Club, it would get a completely slightly different write up from the time I was maybe playing it with my kids, like 2 or 3 times when we did that.
Yeah.
Because of the experience that we had, and because of certain opinions that people kind of were vocal about at the time about the game. Have you? So I guess it's like a kind of a different experience. Have you ever? Do you read other people's reviews? I mean, do you? Because I guess you're kind of like you're writing for yourself and you're forming. Yeah. You're obviously crystallizing your own opinion. Have you ever been in the situation where you've kind of completely loved the game and you've noticed that other people have just really not got on with it, or kind of vice versa? Because you're kind of, I guess you're kind of concentrating on your own experiences.
Yeah, I mean, there's that gamble every time, isn't there? It's very subjective when you write about a game, because one person will love something much more than somebody else. But I mean, I do read other people's reviews, not necessarily. I mean, I don't read somebody's review of a game I'm reviewing, necessarily. So, I'm not going to be influenced, and I don't go down that avenue. Yeah. I think one of the things, partly because I am a nobody, a lot of the games are either smaller or much less known. But I quite like looking at trying to find new things, stuff that isn't really, I'll use that phrase again, cult of the new. Everybody's raving at the moment about, I don't know, was it Roots or something that was round about this time? And like everybody's saying, oh, look what I've got to the table. I think, well, okay, yeah, brilliant. And I quite like looking at games that are really good, but aren't getting the kind of the social media attention that they probably deserve. Saying that I'm a nobody, which generally it is because I've only been doing it 12 months. But what blew my mind at UK Games Expo in June was that Timo came from Dragon Dawn and actually dragged me out. I was chatting to somebody else and dragged me away and says, oh, come and look at this. And I had no idea who he was at the time until I sat down, and it was Perdition's Mouth. And he'd been following the website and says, oh, will you review this for me? So he went through how to play it and then gave me a sort of an demo copy to go away and have a review of. Yeah. And he says, well, later on when Darwining comes out, will you review that as well? So I met him again at Essen, and we ended up going for pizza, which was quite cool. And they can drink some. That's quite impressive.
But I guess you don't know who is kind of reading your words, because you can't. No, you can't get people to kind of go through the guest book. I'm constantly surprised was surprised today where we released an episode and somebody had some really, really nice words to say to us about it. And I was kind of like, oh, I didn't even know this person. I've never ever interacted with this person. And then kind of turning around and saying, actually, I keep an eye on you, and what you're kind of up to is kind of like one of the most kind of wonderful things that can kind of happen. It can certainly kind of make your day kind of smile. So when you're basically, if I'm giving you like a game to review, are you like just you try to keep yourself away from other forms of media so that doesn't water down your own opinion? So you basically essentially you're going into like 4 or 5. I mean, do you play it until you're satisfied of your opinion, or do you say, well, I'm going to play it like 4 times? Or
it depends on the size of the game. Big ones like Perdition's Mouth, I think I only managed. I think I did about either 3 or 4. It's like a campaign thing, so I got through 3 or 4 of the campaigns. I thought, well, I'm familiar enough now with how the mechanics work, how the game feels. Obviously the future campaign parts are just exciting things for me to discover. But smaller games that don't take quite as long, I can play. At the minute, I'm doing Dicium, and that's kind of 4 games in one. But while I was waiting for this session to start, I'd played about 6 games of one of they've got like a Civilization version. So the smaller games I can be playing 10 games or so, and a lot of the time it's like, oh, I really like this, so I just carry on playing it beyond what I would need to do to write. But I suppose once it's in your blood, you then, I don't know, you can write a more accurate representation of how the game really plays.
Have you? Do you think there's an overall? You don't have to answer this question if you don't want to. Obviously, you can say shut up and we'll move on. Do you think there's an overall kind of sense of being positive about every single thing that comes out? I mean, is it? Do you think there's a kind of a push, or I never ever see overly negative criticism about a game?
I know what you're saying. I have had similar discussions with other people. I know when I first started, all the games were ones that I owned, and I'm quite critical of things, so I only buy games that I know are going to be a fit. Sometimes it's just a gut feeling. I know that's going to work. So all the games that I had, I knew were good ones, so they couldn't not be a positive review. Although, certain aspects you can pick up. But surprisingly, every game that somebody's given me to review, have not come across any that have been dire. So at the moment, I've not really got any negative reviews on my site, just purely for the fact that I've actually enjoyed everything that I've got so far. I've actually been given 1 or 2 that I thought, particularly prototypes for pre-Kickstarter, and I think, I'm not going to like this one. And then I've got into it and thought, oh, bloody hell, this is actually it's a tasty morsel, this one. So, yeah.
What ones recently have you kind of enjoyed from the kind of the Kickstarter crowd?
Quite an interesting take on dungeon questing, crawling kind of thing was a Pub Quest, Tin Hat Games. He sent me across I've forgotten his name now, the Italian chap, sent me across the files to have a go at, so I printed those out and wrote a review. And that was quite entertaining. Surprised me. I know having a kind of a nicey cartoon illustrative dog dungeoneering kind of theme. But the actual gameplay was more than the visuals led you to believe, so that was quite entertaining. And got to say, Romans from the Ragnar Brothers, I was right early on sent a copy to semi-play test and such. That one was a good one that's just recently funded, I think.
Is that not their last one? Have they not kind of hung up their spurs and said that was the last one that we're doing?
This is the one that, this is all we're going to do. We're hanging the jackets up, end of story. Which is a shame because things like Darien Apocalypse and Ninja and Pinto, fantastic games. This kind of quantum world concept works really well. I've enjoyed those. But it's a shame, but you can understand that the costs of going to various shows to promote and sometimes when you just haven't got that giant media presence, it becomes it becomes a bit of a turmoil trying to get your game out there to people and still make a few quid out of it. So.
Yeah. I mean, you did a review on, a preview on Masters of Ketdown, which was the dice.
Oh,
the full contact.
John's at Earth to Games. Yeah, that was absolutely fantastic, that game. Sadly, I had to move it on to the next reviewer. Yeah. Otherwise, I've kept hold of that one. But that something completely different. And I know I've met John a few times, and actually when I was on holiday down in Cornwall, we met up for a chat about some of the games. And I know there's huge plans for this world around Gettown, including things that may go in a solo direction. So it's interesting to keep an eye on that.
Do you get to, I mean, on something like that, were you able to give John ideas in terms of what would work for kind of like a solo variant of a game?
On this particular one, we've chatted about various things. Not so much, because I think John's got quite a clear idea of where things are going. He has other projects which we've talked at length about, so I've been able to help there. Other Kickstarters, I've actually been able to help out. In fact, Caper Games did Vertium not so long back, and actually I merely asked a question right early on in the project, and then I was asked question after question, and got to a point where I was actually helping mould the solo variant of that, which was quite a nice thing to do. So, I'm not a designer at all, but it's from having played so many different solo variants, you know things that can slot in. So
but I suppose the other thing, if you've been covering games, and I suppose purely by kind of reviewing the games as much as you do and getting the playthroughs done, you'll get a pretty good idea of what potentially could work and what potentially isn't going to kind of work as a solo variant, I can guess, which is, it's a kind of a cool kind of situation to be in. I mean, are you surprised by, I mean, obviously when you're doing the Kickstarter stuff, are you surprised when you see ones that you think, oh, these are fantastic, but they just end up not kind of going anywhere or gaining the momentum?
All the ones that have been sent to do a kind of preview, they've actually funded. Or apart from Dwarven Traders, which I think was stopped, but there is some work being redone to that one, so that may show its head again. But there are, like Unbroken. Artem actually sent an email. He asked me if I'd like to, because he'd seen my website and asked if I'd like to try out a kind of a prototype. And so I wrote about that, and that one went absolutely bonkers.
Gangbusters,
into the billions and trillions.
I think that was kind of like the kind of the summer hit of 2018. I think it was about May, June, and he was on the show, and I must admit, when he came on the show, we had a conversation, and he was like, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I've got to work. I'm finishing work, and I'm going to hang around in the office to have a chat." So we did that, and I didn't know, I wasn't aware of any, because he was, in terms of the media stuff and his actual, the kind of the noise around the campaign, I really hadn't heard an awful lot at all. So we had a really, really nice chat, and then he went his way and I went his way, I went my way. I edited up the interview and kind of put it out there, and then I says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll chuck a buck at it just to keep an eye on it, because you know, obviously to do that and just see kind of what's doing. So I did that, and then as I normally do when throw a pound at something, I'll go back in and check how the progress of the campaign was, and I think it was just, I think he was a couple of days away from launching when we spoke. He was about to press the button. He didn't know what was going to be happening. And then when I went and checked on Kickstarter, the green bar was full. And I was kind of like, what's going on here? And next thing I know is kind of like, it's just, I think he ended up doing something ridiculous. Like it was well over, I think it was close to $200,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
I think he ended up having to invent kind of like basically an entire new game in order to kind of keep the kind of the stretch goals going.
Yeah.
Are there games that you won't do? I mean, are there games that people have kind of approached? Do you find that you get people kind of contacting you who clearly haven't kind of read anything about the site and are saying, hello, it's a 3 to 7 player game, and you're just
I actually don't. I don't get many people offering games, to be fair.
Really?
It's usually previews for Kickstarters people will get in touch with.
Yeah.
The physical, the proper factory-made games, it's usually from when I've gone to conventions. And I don't go saying, oh, give me a game to review, I want to review it. I've usually just gone, said what I do, and asked about solo variants of such and such a game, and then people say, oh, would you like to try one? I say, well, yeah, I'm not going to say no if somebody offers one to try. I don't feel comfortable going up to people and say, well, I review games, give me one. That seems rather pointless. If somebody would like me to do it, then I'm perfectly happy to do it. But I never feel comfortable touting for business.
Yeah.
And on that, I've actually came back from Essen with 2 games that are not solo to review, which is not my norm. But it's just that I do have a very small section. That's where Masters of Getan was reviewed. There's a small section on right at the bottom of the site that looks at various games that really appeal to me that are usually sort of maybe 2 or 3 player. And then I have to rope in the kids and get Mrs. P involved as well. She likes word games, but it's a torture to try and teach her new things.
Is it a case that this is now just something that you do as an accepted kind of part in the house that, like, oh, there goes your father going up to his table kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's a way to kind of write something and stuff like that. I mean, do you, as kind of like, you are getting kind of a little bit well known.
Yeah.
Are you finding
well known?
I think. See, this is the thing. But then I say that I don't think we're anywhere. But then out of the random blue, I'll get somebody contacting me. I'll be going, what kind of thing, and I'll be going, I think I was speaking to my friend Jake about this on the episode. Is I kind of want to be the guy that's recognised, but also if somebody recognised me, the first thing I'd be like turning around to them and saying, "You sure you got the right guy?"
Yeah.
You sure you don't mean the guys that are saying we're definitely wizards.com instead. Maybe it's like those guys kind of instead. So it's kind of like a weird thing to kind of be recognised, but you definitely kind of got your place. I mean, one thing I have noticed in a lot of Kickstarters now is the solo variant seems to be almost like a norm, if not kind of like a standard.
It's almost a victim of its own success, really, isn't it? That kind of thing that backers go in and start shouting. The thing is, if a game's good for solo, then fine, make a variant. But so many people are saying, I want a solo variant for this game, it should have one, blah, blah, blah. And almost the designers are almost compelled to come up with something. And it's a shame that you get really pithy, beat your own score kind of things laid on the top just to pacify these people, rather than turning around and saying, well, this game really wouldn't work, it wouldn't be entertaining as a solo, it's just going to stay multiplayer. I mean, there are 1 or 2 exceptions. Nigel from 138 Elephant with, was it Carcosa, had, it was like kind of a Carcassonne tile laying kind of thing.
Nigel's been on the show a couple of times,
He got really badgered to do a solo for that, and he went away during the campaign and actually rewrote a completely separate solo variant, which uses the same mechanics but plays a little differently. But I actually think that is the stronger of the 2 games. So, sometimes it really does work if a designer is prepared to go away and put in the time and effort the rewards are absolutely fantastic. But again, some people just say, "Oh well,
Would you like? I mean, would you like to go into the kind of the guidance and consultancy kind of bit? If I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, if
I know two things about everything. That's nothing and bugger all. So it would be
that's not true at all. I'm sure that's you've forgotten out as well.
Yeah.
No, I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, if somebody was listening along tonight, because we do get a lot of, I mean, as you know, I mean, our primary kind of choice of cannon fodder to have people on to have a chat with us is usually Kickstarter people, and obviously a lot of those people kind of listen to the show before they actually contact us and say, can I come on, but can you really promise that you're going to not try and be funny with me? But I mean, if somebody did say kind of were interested in like a solo variant, would you be the guy that they would welcomely they could contact you and talk to you about it?
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely always interested in any aspect of making any game accessible to a single player.
Mm-hmm.
So I welcome people email, and I'm quite happy to get involved in that kind of thing. I don't know whether I suit the umbrella title of consultant, but certainly happy to give my ideas and suggestions. I've done it a few times on a few Kickstarters already, but that's kind of purely by chance. So people haven't actually come up and said, right, we want your perspective on this kind of thing. Yeah. But I mean, if somebody wants to do that, I'm more than happy to. Yeah.
Is there somewhere, either sitting behind you or sitting near that table that you play the games, is there like an A4 folder that's got your game designs in?
I had 2 game design ideas, and then I discovered one, and this is going back a short while, discovered one seemed very similar to something else that was out there. I mean, it was purely by chance that I came across it. The other one, I thought, well, this is absolutely fantastic. It's one of these can't get to sleep at night things, and ideas are buzzing about, and failed to put pen to paper, so I haven't a clue what it is now. So I'm hoping that one night when I'm laid awake, I'll actually it'll all come back to me. But I can't even think. Was it a fantasy? Was it a sci-fi? I don't even know what the theme was. I should write things down.
Is there games out there? I mean, is there a game out there that you would like to see a kind of a solo variant for? It actually probably never happened because it's technically really difficult to do, but is there any kind of game that you would love to see if somebody says, I was just on a solo variant for this for you?
I would like to see a challenging racing game, whether it be horses or whether it be cars or Moulin Rouge or whatever it's called, the bike game. Something like that has some way of controlling the AI of all of your opponents. Because I think that is it Rallyman or something along those lines. It's just they have a solo which has some nice ideas that you're penalised for using certain gears. If you go too fast, you're penalised time-wise. But it's still in like a time trial. It's you doing time trials. It's sort of the Friday and Saturday of Formula One, isn't it? And something like that, to have a driven AI so that you're competing against all these other cars. That's something that isn't there at the moment, certainly to my knowledge, that I think would be quite entertaining.
How would you do that?
No idea.
I know how you. I think let's do. We're Not Wizards crazy. Make a game in 5 minutes kind of game, right? Okay. Okay. Here we go. So I've seen this before in a similar mechanic, but the speed of the cars is based around almost like a worker placement kind of situation. Yeah. So what you have is the speed of the cars is based around you placing your pit crew person in the right gap, and then everybody else plays their player in the right gap. But with the automata, what happens is it just it basically changes roles. It all switches round.
Right.
So if you've got like 4 players, then you get the choice the first time. But then the first player, the automata gets the choice the next time, and they have like a deciding card to say, well, given a choice, they will always go for that speed.
Yeah.
And then you kind of play that for the kind of the speed, and then when it comes to the cornering, there's a second section. You've got a worker placement part for when they do the replacement of the parts and stuff like that, when they do tire changes.
Yeah.
Might work.
Yeah.
Might work.
Yeah. Quick, patent it. Copyright it.
Do you know what? See what I've said? I've said, if anybody listens along, and if they rocked up and sent me an email in like a year's time and said, here's that game idea that you talked about on this episode, and I've got it on Kickstarter. The only time I'd be really annoyed is if it was maybe somebody came back and said, hey, look, we funded this Kickstarter and we got 1.2 million quid. Something like that.
And then a quick note saying thanks for the idea, but you're getting absolutely no recognition.
You're getting absolutely nothing, because we changed the name, and we changed them from being squirrels to bears instead, and it's like, damn, can I get away from that? Can I get away from that? As time goes on, and obviously you'll build up kind of like the reputation, and you're well known. I mean, you're known. I mean, when folk were talking about, I remember, I think it was Sarah Kennington. I think did you bumped into her? I think it was potentially, it was Essen. You bumped into each other
physically. I wasn't even looking where I was going, and we literally both smacked into each other. So.
Smacked into each other.
Yeah.
But you've got this
selfie.
I know, I saw that, and but you have got this horrific reputation of actually being a really, really genuinely nice person, which
Nonsense.
obviously
that's a massive facade put up by my PR agents.
Well, that's good, because you've got fantastic PR agents, and you should utterly kind of reward them. I mean, are you happy with? No, you're obviously happy with where you are, but are you kind of at the point where it's kind of like, this is a thing I do, and it doesn't really matter if I end up getting kind of other names kind of contacting me and saying, let's talk about solo variants. So you quite, because you seem to be steadily kind of growing. You seem to be, more and more people I know kind of reference you and talk about you and mention the kind of the reviews that you do, because the reviews you do, I mean, the best thing about the site is you've actually got a click on this play button and you can have some ambient music while you listen to it. Yeah. It's just it's absolutely fantastic.
Well, the thing is, I play all my games to either games that come with the soundtrack, like oh god, I can't think of any. Well, Tristan Hall's 1066 has got some tunes, and Glimmerkilth Forth has its own OST. So yeah, I play those, and the games that don't have a soundtrack, I just make a playlist off YouTube. There's plenty of stuff knocking about there that suits the game. So I just thought, well, I'm trying to create the atmosphere of a game, and why not, build on that ambience by having a dungeon sound for the dungeon crawler games and whatever.
That's cool. That's cool. No, as I say, but it is your reviews are very, very comprehensive. They're very, very well written.
Does that mean long? Because they are getting
they are long. No, they are.
But the thing is, I keep finding new things to I keep finding new things to add. There was a time somebody on Board Game Geek suggested about mentioning, the rule books. When I first started, I wasn't looking at, how good the rule book is, how difficult it was to understand, how thick it was, So I've been adding things like that, and whether a game's easy to win or not. Is it such a hard battle that it really isn't worth? There's no fun in playing it, and that kind of thing. So, new things keep coming along, and so I have to go back through some of the old ones and think, well, I better try and get some consistency.
I know, but the thing about your style is it's kind of like this is the way I'm going to write it, and there doesn't seem to be. I mean, I'm guilty of this, and everybody's guilty of this. There's a lot of folk guilty of this. So they're just saying like, okay, let's talk about the gameplay, and then let's try and get an opinion. I try to move away from that and just, as I say, in some of the stuff I've written, it's got absolutely nothing to do with the game. It's just a general kind of feel, and a lot of it is just to say, I want to just write some nonsense and hopefully generate some noise, because I know there's an awful lot of other guys out there. As I say, my greatest work to date was the one I did, Seals of Cthulhu for Sean Epperson, and I complained about the seals or lack of seals for like 700 words and never actually really mentioned the game at all, which is kind of like, I thought was my kind of finest hour. But I think the thing is, and I guess this is me saying, if you have not read any of Giles' work, take a second and just dip into some of the stuff that he does, because you do actually learn. You learn about. You don't just learn about the game, but you actually really, really learn about your actual genuine kind of thoughts and what you thought about it, and what you thought was good and what you thought was really good, or what you thought was kind of be improved, and more importantly, could you what's the solo side of things like? Does it work as a solo game, or does it not work as a solo game? So I would encourage everybody who hasn't gone to bothsidesofmytable.com to go and to go and pick out and check a couple of games. Your Masters of Get Town review, which was mentioned by Giant Brain.
All right.
Because I read their preview, and then I read yours, and then I read yours I think a couple of times, because it was quite just very, very thorough. I did like it.
I went back on that one because I originally wrote based on playing at UK Games Expo, and then John sent me a proper prototype to do a real playthrough. So I thought, well, I'm not going to rewrite what I wrote. So I did a lot of edits into that, adding to the experience. So it started to become quite a lengthy piece.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward to kind of coming up soon? What would you like to kind of get your hand? What would you like to get your hands on? If I was Father Santa Wizard, and I said, "Ho ho ho! You've been a very good boy, Giles." Yeah. And I reached into my velveteen sack of joy, and I pulled out a couple of games.
Is this what rating is this show? Just out of interest, because you're reaching into your sack of joy, and I'm kind of worried there.
It's okay. It's universal. But is there anything that you would like to see under your tree?
I quite liked V Commandos.
Oh.
I don't know why. I have one or two solo war games, and I suppose there's not a lot of difference between that and some of the fantasy ones. It's just set in a World War II. But I saw Ricky Royal did a preview ages back before they launched the game, and I got to have a closer look at Essen. And I mean, it's way out of my price league. It's about 80 quid, isn't it, or something? So it's, that won't be appearing on my table, but that's one I did quite like.
Oh, cool. Okay.
There's a couple on Kickstarter now that the names escape me completely. I can't think. I'll tell you what I would like as well was Robin Hood. Martin Poole down in Telford, he designed Robin Hood.
Yes.
And I'd quite like to have a go at that one, actually. So I really enjoyed Rise to Nobility, and I think it just sort of fits very much into that genre.
I've heard some good things about it, and it was kind of recently fulfilled, which is kind of cool. Listen, thank you very, very much for coming on, Giles.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
It's been interesting.
Been decidedly average, yes.
It has definitely been one of those 5 out of 5 shows, I'm afraid. If people want to find you on the internet webs, where can we find you on the internet webs?
Bothsidesofmytable.com is the website, and I've got to look on my thing because I can't remember what. BS small OMT _ 2018 is the Twitter.
Yes.
And something vaguely both sides of my table on Instagram as well. And there's a Facebook page and a Facebook group. If you put both sides of my table in, they should turn up as well.
Oh, cool.
So there's various things. It all repeats exactly the same photographs, just that some people don't have all of the different social
everybody's
media.
not everybody's on social media all across the world.
Yeah. Twitter's my most active area.
You are.
Because that's easy to do. That's easy to just shout nonsense at people and abuse folk and then disappear. Yeah.
I'm perfectly joining that kind of angry man shouts at various cloud formations kind of group. I'm pretty sure there's a Facebook group to help the people that do that. I know it because I run the group. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, go to internet webs, go to the Googlies, and you'll find us on Twitter at We're Not Wizards, Facebook at We're Not Wizards, Instagram at We're Not Wizards. You'll find us on our website, which is we'renotwizards.com, our blog, which is we'renotwizards.blogspot.com. You will find you'll find us on the various podcast catchers, which is your Stitchers, your Spreakers, your Acast, your Podknives, Podbean, because they host us and they're fabulous, and they put us on YouTube every time we release an episode, which is lovely.
And you've also got a link somewhere on my website as well.
I know. I saw that the other day, and I was like, no, that's so nice. And if you like us, then please consider going to Apple Podcasts and drop us a subscription. If you like us even more, then give us a rating or a review. And as we say, don't give us 10 stars because it just makes us big-headed. And don't give us 1 star because it makes us cry, and I'm an ugly crier. Give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average. And we are decidedly average. Me and Giles are forming
decidedly average. 5's a good.
We're going to be the average white reviewers guys show. Like the average white band. That's what we're going to be doing. But the person who's not been average tonight is rather wonderful, rather fantastic, Mr. Giles Pound. Thank you very much for coming on, sir. This has been a lot of fun. There's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we are many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Giles?
Well, I'm sporting a long beard, but I can definitely vouch for not being a wizard.
Good. Otherwise I might just delete this whole thing. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Giles. Say goodbye, Giles.
Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll6s.com. Sometimes when the telly's a bit boring, it's okay just to take out a board game off your shelf and stick it on the table and play it by yourself. But sometimes you need a little bit of guidance. And you don't want to be running about the table like a dafty. You want to stroll gently back and forward so you can effectively be both sides of my table. But until the next time, goodbye.